quality of the interactions they're
And
having with people. It's strictly based on their social presence.
here's a question for you. Do you think that as a young adult, and I'm talking like between the ages of like 12 and 16, do you think that between those ages versus the age that like you and I are now, you know, in our early 20s for you and like my late 70s, do you think that, there's a callback joke. Do you think that,
Remarkably few wrinkles for someone.
I mean, you know, it's,
what's your secret?
shea butter. Is that a thing? Is that even a thing? I don't.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is.
Pantene OV formula. I don't know. That was
The L'Oreal No Tears
There you
Kid
go.
shampoo.
Yeah, that's
Just
the one.
Drink a cup of that for breakfast.
It took me the longest time to figure out that that was a fish container. By the way,
Yeah, the little fish
I had
bottle.
no idea. I was like, as a kid, I was like, why the fuck does this have an eye? Anyways, do you think that as a young adult, because you are so young, that social media has a larger effect, a more negative effect on you versus you and I now? Like, I can't say that there is no effect, but do you think that because we're adults and we're less impressionable and we have that's the Spanish-English crossover, a better understanding of who we are and what we want and what we expect from ourselves and where our goals are and our ambitions and everything, do you think that there is a less negative effect on our brains versus as a young adult where your biggest issues are, well, I didn't get a like, or, you know, I'm failing my test, you know, in America, I should say, in America.
Absolutely. I think that we were very lucky to have gotten social media in the way that we did, because I think it was kind of crafted as we were going through those really impressionable years, and it was still growing into kind of the monster that it is now. And I don't mean monster in just a negative term. I just mean the scale of it, of a lot of these social media platforms. I think it has less of an impact on us at this age because, I mean, your life changes a lot when you're out of school, for example. When you're not in middle school, high school, college, your life changes dramatically in a social sense. Yeah. Never again are you going to be just thrust into a situation like college where it's a bunch of like-minded, same-age individuals who are all kind of nervous and in the same spot, and everyone's looking to make friends and meet people and have fun. That goes away, and that's why people are always telling you to cherish that. But to have social media be such a big part of that now, I think is a little bit dangerous too. When you and I were in elementary school, social media really didn't exist.
No.
Not on the scale that it does now.
No, it was like chat
when we were
rooms
in
on
middle
AOL.
school. Right, exactly. And we'd play like Neopets and shit. That was social media
God,
when
I
we
miss
were,
those days.
when we were in elementary school. Now, when we were in middle school, I believe I was in middle school when I first made a Facebook account. But it was so rudimentary at that time. I remember people having it and it was fun, but it didn't control my life. I still was much more interested in calling my friends on the phone and talking and then actually going over to people's houses. I wasn't so obsessed with social media. And then in high school, social media was very big. And of course, in college, it was really big. But I do worry a little bit, you know, when it comes time that you and I potentially have children, their entire lives are going to be filled with social media in a big way, even in their education. I mean, even schools now are posting things on social media pages.
Yeah.
It's just become a part of our culture. And so I do worry because, like you said, I think it's very much a bigger impact when you're younger, and life is so much more about your social identity than it is now. I mean, dude, the closest person to my age that I work with, there's a couple younger people now on my team, but at my work for a long time, the closest person to me in age was like in their 40s. I mean, you're talking about almost a 20-year age gap. You think those people give a crap about what you're posting on social media? I mean, for the most part, most people in their 50s and older, and this is a stereotype. I know this is not the case for everybody, not the case for a lot of people, but in my experience, people, 50s and up don't really care that much about social media because it's not been such a big part of their life.
Well, and it's more so that they grew up in a time that was vastly different than ours.
Exactly.
And so their own beliefs, their own core values are just very different than ours.
Right.
You know,
I do feel like it has a bigger impact to a younger person, more so because the world when you're younger and you're in school and you're around all your friends all the time, the world is so much more about your social identity and how you fit into those groups, how you fit in amongst your peers. And when you're so impressionable and it matters so much, it's such a big part of your life to be liked or, not embarrass yourself or whatever it is. And social media can be used in a very dangerous way in that sense, where it can have a very negative impact on people's lives.
Yeah, because it has the potential to be something different.
Right.
But you're right, especially for younger audiences, which unfortunately are the bigger market, because it's so easy to target somebody young, and then in that same sense, you're targeting their parents because they're the ones that are going to buy them the thing that you're trying to market or whatever.
Right. Right.
And you're manipulating the fact that they are still growing, which, I mean, that's ultimately what you're doing. You're manipulating a young person's mind into thinking the way you want them to think in order to make some money.
I think it's very important that we educate younger generations on the impact that social media can have in your lives.
Absolutely.
And I think that we are, in some sense, I think that topic is being brought up more and more. But, and I almost mean in a sense of almost like the DARE program. I don't know if you had the DARE program in school. Like
yeah.
You know, the anti-drug program, essentially.
I did so many drugs.
Yeah, man, they put me through that Scared Straight program. It was crazy.
Yep.
I had to spend the night in prison. I think it's important that we at least educate kids on saying, hey, look, do I think that TikTok should be banned in America? I don't know about that. I mean, yeah, there's a part that, you need to be careful about what kind of sensitive data you put out there, but that's not even really what I'm talking about. I think the reason why something like the social dilemma is important to watch is not so that you're going to turn your phone off and throw it away and get a little fire kit so you can make smoke signals for your friends everywhere you go. I think it's so that you can at least be aware of how the business is working behind the screen and what the intent is and how they're trying to manipulate your actions in some way. They're trying to get you to buy something.
Yeah.
They're trying to hold your attention. Social media pages are trying to get you to follow them. They're trying to put information out there. You need to be careful. You need to be able to filter out the nonsense. You need to be able to filter out the bullshit because there's a lot of it out there.
And I think it's important to try and educate the youth about this kind of thing, but then you're getting into the realm of like, well, how do you make something, quote unquote hip and not feel like it's an after school special? And I think that unfortunately the thing that we do, especially with sex education and any sort of like social media education or anti-bullying or anything, it all comes off as preachy and like hunky-dory, like, you're a special butterfly and don't let anybody tell, like, it doesn't come off as real. We treat our young adults like they're children, and I think the only way to get across the real value of what social media is trying to accomplish and what it's ultimately subconsciously doing to our brains is to treat them like adults and say, look, dude, like, this is the shit that you're like, you have to present it in a way that is going to open their eyes, because unfortunately most young adults nowadays are just completely unfazed by most of that information. They just don't care because we've been trained to think on short-term levels.
We expect as people, and I'd imagine as parents and stuff too, just from kind of my experience as a kid growing up and talking to my friends, we expect our kids to just learn about so many important things from their friends or something because it feels so weird to talk about it. Like, we expect our kids to learn about sex from their friends, kind of. Like, you have the talk or whatever, but for the most part, you expect our kids to learn about sex from their friends. You expect our kids to learn about a lot of things in life from their peers.
Yeah.
And we just skim the surface, and on a lot of these topics like sexual education, like drug education, we do the bare minimum. That's not to say that, parents should like expose all their kids to a bunch of different kinds of drugs or anything like that, but it just seems like it's almost such a taboo to talk about these kind of things to your kids. I think social media doesn't need to become one of those things. And I understand it does sound preachy, and we sound kind of old school just even talking about this like that.
I mean,
but it's not that you need to put this phone away all the time. Social media has become part of our culture. Kids are always going to be on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We are, and we're not kids. You know what I mean? So they're going to do the same thing. But I think it's important to have a conversation and say, hey, look, like, you're going to see people doing amazing, incredible, crazy things on Instagram or social media. Sometimes, people, it becomes so easy to compare yourself to people that you're seeing on social media, because people portray their life as being perfect. You don't see a lot of people post on the bad days or the bad things that happen to them on Instagram. It's, oh, I took this trip, or I got these shoes, or I look at my new phone, or look at my new car. And when you see that, you start to compare yourself to that, and you start to wonder why you aren't where they are or have what they have. That can be really dangerous too.
That's where all of that data comes into play. Is, like they're pruning you basically for every little bit of information that they can get from you that they can then use to affect the way that you would vote or spend or anything really. And it's kind of crazy to think that it, obviously the documentary showed it as, like weird three triplets, not three triplets, triplets, who are like controlling his like avatar or whatever.
Right.
But it gets across the point that it really is this like faceless entity that's kind